We'll share this with you. We'll record also when we get to the decision step. It'll stay on the whole time. And my apologies. I have a little bit of a cold, which is got my family in a panic. I've been taking COVID tests. I'm COVID clear, so nobody wants to be around me just in case. So when we talk about budget, I'm going to go one step further. I'm reviewing from last week, and then we'll advance into the decision step. There are really three swings that I think we get when we're at the budget step. So Ann, let's imagine I were selling to you and we've had a great pain conversation. I might say to Ann, and this is step number one. I don't think you'll find this in any of the materials that we send out. I think you'll see some semblance of this, but nothing in this order. But let's imagine, Ann, you and I had a great pain conversation. And we use the transition. Who remembers what the transition is? It's 2 to 4 letters. Anybody remember the transition?
Summarize, validate, important.
You're not committed, Greg. You're not committed. I can't believe you're not committed.
Oh, committed, not caught. I knew.
Boom. Summarize and validate. So when I advance out of pain, again, easy to say here, summarize and validate, and you've got these three issues, issue number one, issue number two, issue number three. It's impacting you $50,000 a year. You're losing resources. Your time is getting sucked up having to recruit new people, whatever it is. Validate. Do I have that right? Ann says,
yes, you do.
If you get that confirmation, can't guarantee you, but your close rate is going up. If you follow that step in your selling process, your close rate is going to go up. If they say no, your prospect says no to you, you simply say, what did I miss? You're back into the pain step. I get the importance and commitment. And then I say, hey, Ann, can I make a suggestion? And Ann says,
sure.
Why don't we talk about the time, the money, and the resources that it takes to fix this problem? And I'll say to Ann, hey, where do you want to start? And she'll pick one, and I'll say, that's awesome. Had a feeling you'd pick that. We run through all three. When we talk about the time and the resource conversation, I won't say it's a piece of cake, but it's relatively easy because there's no money involved. So as Vanessa told us earlier, the defenses are up on the money, but in the time and the resource impact, those are pretty easy conversations to be had. So when I go to the money aspect, I'm going to follow a 3-step process. I am very simply going to say to Ann, hey, Ann, based on the issues that you have, and you may not have this number, but is there a budgeted number that you have to fix this problem? To which Ann has 2 choices to respond with. And Ann, what would be your choice here?
I guess it depends on the solutions you provide.
Oh, we're going to fix it, but if you give me the budget, if you give me a budget, I can start to build a program that supports what we're trying to fix here.
Below 5,000.
I'm just kidding. Wait, hang on. I have a great sound effect for that. All right. So below 5,000. Let's imagine that that's realistic. I want to get a number from her. She gave me a number. Now I've got something to work with. Many times people will say, I don't have a number. I don't have a number. I have no idea what this even costs. And if we were to say to those folks, hey, it's $5,000, how would Ann respond?
Sounds perfect.
She might say it sounds perfect. Other times they say it's too high or that's less than I expected. People always have a number. So step number one is we ask, hey, based on the issues that you have, what is the solution? What is the investment that you have allocated to fix this problem? We see where it takes us. Here's where, again, conceptual money beliefs get in the way. We sometimes fold like a cheap suit. The moment Ann says, I have no freaking idea what this costs, I go, okay, it's $10,000 because I fold. But step number 2 is, hey, Ann, I'm going to have a little conversation. When you look at other projects similar to this that you've done in the past, How have you come up with the money? How have you allocated it? What type of investments have you made? We'll have a little bit of a conversation, to which Ann could say, hey, here's the information. Or Ann can push back one more time and say, we really haven't done a project like this. And, we've never done this before, not sure how we get it, blah, blah, blah. So I've now taken 2 swings at trying to get her budget out. Conceptually, we got to hold our feet to the ground and have a little bit more conversation and try not to fold. The last effort that I suggest here is, because I call this it's a 3 attempt at getting the budget. The last one, and we touched on this last week, is, let me just switch over to my whiteboard here, is what I call the range. And to me, the range is absolute gold. So let's imagine I'm selling to Ann, and I know my business pretty well. So I know how much this is going to cost. I say, Ann, would it help if I shared a range with you to see if maybe we can make something work out? And
Sure.
Ann says,
Absolutely.
no one ever says no. 100% of the time, or 97.5% of the time, they say, absolutely, of course, let's do it that way. So let's imagine I'm selling to Ann. I'm going to use made up numbers. I know that the solution is 10 grand. I say, hey, Ann, listen, typically in my experience, a project like this to fix some of those issues is somewhere between $10,000 and $16,000. Anybody notice what the low end number is? That's where I want to be. So I throw it out. Now I want to make sure, this is one of those, I call this tactic a little bit unfair. We are ethical. I mean, our goal is to be as ethical as possible. That's Sandler. We want to build solutions within the budget, the time, the money, and the resources of our clients. If Ann goes, you know what, I've got $18,000. Oh, based on that, I've got $18,000. I don't say, okay, great, I'll take it. I say, no, it's somewhere. The good news is it's somewhere in here. And I've actually had those conversations. Let's go back to, though, this range. I say, Ann, the solution is somewhere between $10,000 and $16,000. If you had to pick somewhere in that range where you'd like to be, can you share that number with me? And Ann says,
Below 10,000.
what'd you say?
Below 10,000.
I can't get it there. I can't get it there. But if we could keep it in the range
12,000.
of about 10,000,
12,000.
12,000. By the way, 95% of the time they come up with that number. It's always typically north of your bottom line number. And now I very simply say, Ann, I think that number should fit. Let's put together a program that's right around that $12,000 range. People's brains tend to go to the bottom end of the range, but often above it. I don't know what it is. I have never researched it. Maybe somebody here would, but that is typically the conversation. So the range is the third swipe that I'm taking at creating a great budget. At the end of the day, who created the budget? Me or Ann? Or me and Ann? Ann
Yes,
owns
I
it.
did.
Yeah, Ann owns it. I mean, I kind of guided her there, but we will now have a better conversation about building a solution, because I very simply go, Ann, if $12,000 is your number, we can put together a program for that. And we have now, let me just stop my share for 1 second. Let's go back here for one moment. And then we're going to jump over to decision. And the other screen has dropped off, so we'll leave it. But I've checked the box. I checked my pain box. I checked my budget box. And now we know our percentage to close is going way up. We've got pain. We've got an understanding of the impacts. And we have an agreed upon time, money, and resources to advance forward. So think about traditional selling. Traditional selling is, let me give you a proposal. And then you come back and say, oh, that's more expensive than we thought. That's not exact. No, we're building the solution together. We're talking about a 25,000 foot view. We've got to be aware of that. The reality of an application is different for each business, but we're getting there. We're getting there. Excuse me. Any questions or thoughts as we continue to move here? We're going to move it over to decision in one moment. Anybody have any questions or thoughts? Did I bore everybody to death? Everybody's ready to go to sleep?
I think that was very helpful. Thank you so much for sharing that insight. That was really
Thank you,
interesting.
Vanessa. Thank you, Vanessa. And the check is in the mail. Thank you for jumping in. I love Vanessa. Awesome. So here, now let's look at the steps. Pain, budget. We close the levers. New gate opens up, and we've got to advance over to the last thing that could derail the sale is making sure, I'm going to stop my share so Andy can jump in here, is making sure we have the right players involved. Because that really is the last gap in the selling process. Is somebody from the outside coming in, you've given them the proposal and then they go, let me just run this by the committee. Oh, I need to run it by my boss. We want to clear that in our next step, what we call the decision step, which is not a great name, because the decision step, people go, that's yes, no, are we buying? No. It's more about the players. And Andy, I'm going to kick it over to you to jump in here.
More about the players. Hey, Dave, your savviness getting to the right price kind of made me feel like this is a done deal. Looks like Ann's into it, right? No?
Yeah, and when I sent her
I'm
that
pretty
invoice,
committed.
Pretty
I'm going to send her an
committed.
invoice this afternoon.
Pretty committed. Let's see. I want you guys to listen, watch closely what's going on here, and tell me about the dynamics after on the other side.
And he's going to throw it long. And he's got a man there on the run. Kalen Clay gone. Touchdown. "79 yards for the score."
Well, he had 57 yards passing last week.
What's going on the field here? Wait a minute. Joe Walker's in the end zone on the other end.
You know what? Kalen Clay dropped the football before he crossed the goal line. And the side judge...
Rolling down the field, as the runner fumbled the ball prior to getting into the end zone. The ball was recovered by the defense. The play is under further review.
This will be interesting.
The side judge was watching it the entire way. Watch Kalen Clay before he crosses the goal line. He drops the ball clearly. What was he thinking?
Oh my goodness. What would have been a set?
All right. So, guys, what happened?
Drop
Lost
the ball.
Drop the ball.
Oh, yes,
Would have had a touchdown, right?
yes,
What didn't he do?
complete, stay committed. Complete the task.
Gene, I saw you like, oh my God.
I know, I was like, oh my goodness, what in the world is he doing? What happened?
Kalen Clay dropped the ball. He didn't finish the job, even though Dave got Ann's agreement on budget. He couldn't make that move towards the touchdown line. He couldn't spike the ball until he got one step done. Right? Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
You can't skip the last steps. These last three steps, including decision, are the qualifiers, and they decide whether yes or no, we're going to end up doing business. You can't cut it out. So 3 different things we're looking at: the elements of the decision step, the outcomes of the decision step, and why you might disqualify a prospect yourself. Seems silly. We've gotten all the way through this and we're going to really consider disqualifying qualifying a prospect. You guys think that's kind of stupid? Silly? What do you think?
No. Don't want to
Who
waste your
said no,
time.
Ann?
Me, you don't want to waste your time.
That's true.
Yeah.
Everybody agree with that, or nobody agree with that? Ann's the only one?
No, I agree. You don't want to waste the time. I mean, when I first heard David kind of talk about it, I was like, disqualify the client, the prospect. I didn't agree with it initially, but as time progressed, now it makes more sense because you really don't want to waste time and get to that point where they say, well, it's too much, or, it's not going to be a good fit, or we need to go to another person to make the decision. And you just spent a whole week trying to get the business from this particular person who you thought would be able to say, boom, I got it. This is it. We're moving forward. You got the contract.
Yeah.
So,
Excellent, Gene. So you got to finish the job. You got to get through this decision step. So the outcomes we'll get here is disqualifying them, having other people enter with their information, having to pull them into the process, and to decide whether or not the prospect is indeed a qualified prospect. Important things in the decision step and the outcomes thereof. So the whole process looks like this. Review, pain, and budget, we've talked about that. Almost every stage you go through in Sandler, you're reviewing the last stage and you're segueing and bridging to the next stage. We got to start information gathering because there's a lot of pretty intense information that's important. So we got to figure this out. We do that by getting the prospect talking and understanding whether we're going to need to have different meetings, because some of these questions will come up with zeros, no answer, have no influence, don't get it, don't have the authority to do that. And as we weed through this thing, we need to get to the person or the situation where we can get the question answered, or it won't be qualified. So it's also an opportunity and a need. The outcome of a decision step is to put together the ultimate upfront contract. Wow, that sounds intimidating, powerful, awesome. What is one? Anybody know? The ultimate upfront contract. What does that sound like?
But by the way, tough question, not an easy question, but anybody want to take a stab on that?
A verbal contract
Boom, about what?
about the service you're going to provide.
Yes, that's 100% correct. The product or service you're going to provide. But it sets the stage, that upfront contract sets a stage for a yes or no. We're down to it now. We're figuring out how we're going to get there. And if we get there, is it indeed something you'll take action on? So anybody whose name begins with med and ends with survey is not allowed to answer this question. If they do, they're penalized.
What's the penalty?
You don't need to know that yet, Greg. For yours, it's pretty harsh.
Okay.
For Kelly, she'll get away okay. Connell, he's not even checked in, so he won't be able to answer.
The answer's Fred.
What is Wilma's husband's name? Oh, sorry. Thank you, Connell.
What the heck is that about? What do we got going on here? Don't do it, Greg. Put yourself on mute. Don't take the itch. Anybody? Is anybody in a military family ever served in the military? Had a friend or a family member that served in the military? Good friend of mine and Dave's too. Tim Goring was a Marine pilot. He helped me remember the 6 different questions that I had to answer, get answers to in the decision step. Nobody's taking a swing. I got a Fred Flintstone, but I got nothing here. Wow.
Can I give a clue?
Yeah, give him a clue.
What
Whiskey
would a
Five
news? Oh, sorry, you can give the clue. Sorry, Greg. I thought you were asking for me to give the clue.
Whiskey 5 Hotel.
It's a little bit more of than a clue. That's kind of like an answer. Wouldn't you think that's like an answer?
Let's see if anyone got it. To you, it seems like an answer, but
Does that seem like a good answer, guys? All right, so I won't say that you're no fun, but you're not very responsive to fun questions. Here we go.
You have to
Whiskey.
you have to share your screen.
All right, that's part of my problem, I guess. Is that showing it?
Now it is.
Yeah, so what's Whiskey 5 Hotel stand for?
Think about newspaper reporter.
I do have them in there. I don't see
I
them.
got it. I
Go,
got it.
Vanessa. Go, Vanessa.
All right. Whiskey is like in the alpha, beta, well, whatever. So whiskeys, W's, 5 Y's, and a how. Like who, what, where, when, why, and how, right?
Boom.
Got it?
Boom.
I never
Awesome.
thought anybody would get that.
Yes. Good. Thank you.
Wow.
So who chatted you the answer, Vanessa?
Nobody.
Nobody. You can tell that's
Good old
genuine.
brain power. Thank you very much.
Outstanding. Outstanding.
First time, long time anybody's gotten that. Awesome. I use this as a device, guys, to when I'm standing in front of the customer and I'm figuring out what it's going to take to vet out the situation. You know, who makes the decision? What is the actual decision that needs to be made? Where is the decision made in the company? All of these need to be covered off on. Now, I'll leave an exception out there for the moment, but you kind of have to understand how the paperwork runs through the organization. If you're talking about a complex organization, a mid-sized organization, not just a small, closely held company you might be selling to, you got to know how it kind of works in there and how that they go about making decisions. Obviously, we need to know who in the organization touches it, or who, at least other than themselves, the person you're speaking to, the prospect, who other than yourself is involved in making a final decision on this. Very important. Is there a time that the decision will be made? I mean, that may be at the end of the quarter. It may be at the beginning of the quarter. It may be as soon as we're ready. It may be as soon as we understand what the competition has to offer. You're going to get that once in a while. Why are they made the way they're made? Sometimes when you get answers to those questions, you get real enlightenment and zen into the whole process. Who can give me a good example of how they used these questions in a recent sale they made?
I'll do it, Andy. I was on the phone yesterday with a lady who the person who was in this position before me had spoken to and had a good relationship with, and they had several phone conversations. And I found out right away, just by asking who, that she is not even the right person to be talking to. So it was very eye-opening right away just to say, whoa. And I actually know the person at that company who is the right person. I just happened to make that connection. So when going through the why, they came right out and said they definitely need a global policy right away. So that right there was like 2 no's to me, because we do not have a global policy right now. So we were just going through the questions, and very quickly, so somebody who's kind of been in the pipeline for quite some time, I was able to disqualify right away.
Yeah, excellent. So what you're saying, Julie, did you get through that part of the decision step and realize that if you had presented it to those people, if you gave their fulfillment, their presentation, their proposal, their quote, what do you think would have happened?
Well, they went to, I mean, the person who we've been in contact with and the person previous to me, they weren't the person who could make that decision in the first place. So we weren't even talking to the right person. If we hadn't been talking to the right person the whole time, I mean, just by the why, we would have known they were disqualified by the type of policy they needed. It's a global policy.
Right. Excellent. So what would have happened? Let's just flip it a little bit. Anybody, what would have happened if Julie had something really going there? It was the right fit. It was the right situation. Her product or service, with, in this case, a policy was perfect for it, but yet she found herself in front of somebody who couldn't make that decision. What would have happened if she didn't know and she kept going in her process?
I would have gotten to the end and gotten a no, and would have been a big time sucker. Already has been a big time sucker.
Right. Now, if there was a live sale there, you would have spilled all your candy in the lobby and told them all the great things about it. And your shot at being able to do that again in front of the decision maker goes down to close to 10%, if not 0. Right? Oh yeah, Julie, we already saw what you got. Meanwhile, somebody who doesn't understand insurance got to see a presentation that didn't inspire them because they had nothing to do with it, right? Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah.
You're spilling the candy, you're dropping the ball on the 2-yard line, right? You're not finishing the process. You're not finishing the decision-making process. You did do it and you found out, and the next time you get to that situation, you may cover it a little earlier in the decision process.
And Andy, if I could jump in here, I think Julie, I think your story is a great one because and I'll probably embellish a few things here. Somebody prior to you obviously wasted a lot of time with the wrong prospect. So clearly that occurred. But also what Julie's pointing out is, we're teaching you early on this as a linear process, pain to budget to decision. It appears, Julie, from listening to you, you identified that earlier in the process. Yeah, I think you kind of understood that I'm not in front of the right decision makers. While that may, from a Sandler perspective, look like it's coming out of order, it's not. It's our job to be as aware about what type of information we're pulling in. It could come almost at any time, especially in, I think, everybody's business here. Everybody here is running some level of enterprise type sale. There's a lot of complication. And if we're not paying attention, we might miss some of these early warning signs that we're not in front of the right decision maker. And if we miss that, we'll end up spending way too much time with prospects that can buy from us. So Julie, I think there's a couple of lessons learned there.
Yeah, good stuff. How about this? Think about this. Back in our upfront contract, when we're doing our first appointment or our first interaction with the customer, or the prospect, we're asking them at the end about outcomes, right? What would be the 3 outcomes we'd offer them? Usually.
Yes, no, or calendar invite.
Yes, no, or get on their calendar. No invitation about it. You're walking that out of there if you can with, on your good job though, Greg. So if we're getting to the end and we're realizing the decision maker is not there, well, we need to go ahead and get that invite, get that calendar, appointment set with the person who can make the decision. That's what we agreed to do. We wanted a clear outcome. We came to something that's pretty foggy. So we know the person that needs to be there now. So let's go ahead and get on his calendar. Looks like Tuesday the 2nd, he's open. Do you have a look at his calendar? A lot of people have a look at their boss's calendar nowadays on Outlook. So that's a great way to utilize the upfront contract to take it to the next step, right? All good. Here's something that I think are probably not talked about as much as we should at Sandler. There are so many tools in the Foundations and Mastery that we can be using to prepare ourselves for the decision step. And I don't know how well you can see this, but there's who, what, where, when, why, and how. I don't know why they put the how in before I like Whiskey 5 hotel, but all those questions in there that help you think about how you're going to mete out this whole decision-making process. It's not normal. It's not necessarily comfortable the first time you do it, and you're going to mess up on leaving some of it out. Ergo, Whiskey 5 hotel, ergo, how are you going to ask those questions? Going through that newspaper reporter approach and writing it out is extremely helpful. There's 3 other ones in 7.2, 3, 4, and 5 that are worth looking at. I'm not going to.
We'll send these out also.
Yeah.
We'll send it out to you guys. Have to search for it.
Okay, you're making it easy on them. I don't usually like to do that, but it's good we have Dave here. Cast of characters. So who is it we're talking to? Who is it that we're getting involved in this decision-making process? Who are we seeking to get involved? And, the stars are obviously the C-suite, those guys, the most powerful men and women that making decisions in the company. And depending on the size of the investment, if it's not something that's awesome in size in comparison to their company and what they had purchased, they don't need to get involved in certain things. And so you don't need to shoot. A lot of guys in enterprise sales say, oh, well, you know what? I got to talk to the C-suite. That's not always an easy thing to do. In fact, it might disqualify you if you go about it the wrong way. Let's think about that. The VPs, and the co-stars, if you will, they work on scheduling and budgets and working off their plan and their individual needs. Usually they're important to get involved because they're going to mete out the TMA that's required. Time, money, resources. Supporting cast, there's people that check out, hey, it's a CRM system. Andy, you're a sales guy. Let me know what you think. Now, obviously, I'm not going to say anything unless it's ridiculously devastating. I'm not going to be able to knock them out of the situation or kick them out of the sales process. But I'll have input. That's important. Bit players, staff, and salespeople, that's what I'm talking about. Now, I'd like you also think about 4 other labels that are important when you look at your buyer personas. What do you figure the economic buyer is, guys? Anybody got an answer to that? Know what that is?
Eyes on price.
Good shot. Not what I was looking for.
The person who signs the check.
Person who signs the check. Now, this person cannot be denied. That's a person that needs to be involved. We need to figure out who writes the check. That's a proverbial thing, right? Who writes the check? If we're not having contact with them, we are disqualifying ourselves. Make sense, guys? Got to know where it's coming from, because the guys below may be willing and able, or so they think. And sometimes they try to garner that power and feel important. So they say, yeah, I'm making this decision. And a lot of times that may not be true. So we need to get to them. What do you think a technical buyer is all about? If I'm selling software to a company and the CEO is making the decision,
It's the implementation person.
it is,
Implementation application.
that would be correct, Connell. Thanks for showing up. Kidding. The technical buyer, I would look at it in the sales process. Part of it is, let me look at the engine of this thing. Let me look at the quality of the tires. Does it run on our track? Is it something that's going to keep up the speed and be reliable? I'm an engineer. I've learned this stuff throughout my career and my training. The CEO wants me to check it out. The one thing about technical buyers, they rarely have the ability to say yes and make the difference, but they definitely can say no. They can knock you out of the running pretty easily. So we need to make sure we incorporate them. The user buyer is a little bit what I was talking about. The CRM, the salesperson is going to use the CRM. Take it for a run, Andy, see what you find out. And the last one would be your coach. And the way you determine that, you think sometimes in an organization, you think you've got the person that's taking you under their wing. And that's all well and good. It's especially good for getting key information instead of just, documentation or feelings or whatever. But the coach is extremely important. If you can turn somebody into a coach, and I define that as somebody who will take an action commitment and do something specific, take action on what you want them to do, that's a coach. They take action to support you, help you out. All righty, those are the types. We talk about the newspaper step, starting with an open-ended question as usual. Fill in the blanks with element-specific questions. That makes sense. Build it all out. But test commitment with additional decision questions. What do you think that last one means? Yeah, at Sandler, we ask a lot of open-ended questions. That's the way we get people talking, right? How about when we want commitment from them? What kind of answer is best? 3 letters.
Yes.
Yes is a great answer. If you've got them, they've seen the software, do you think this may be the solution you're looking for? Yes. That's a sign off on it. That's good. You can move on beyond that one question. So when it comes to making a decision like this, how does your company go about it? Very key. This is a great segue into the next step we call the fulfillment step. This is an important action step and understanding here. Dave, any questions or comments before we go into a exercise here?
No, but I'm gonna jump in. I know we've only got about 5 minutes left, so I just want to share one element here, which is you guys are all experienced. I think, Sheila, I look at you and having worked with Denise in the past, I remember having a conversation with her about the decision step. And she goes, "Oh, I wish you taught me this last week." Because what happened was she was working on a deal. The person that she was going to present to wasn't the decision maker. And she's like, "Why didn't you tell me this last week?" So one of the things that we lay out, and Andy, maybe we wrap up on this. I'm going to knock your screen out for 1 second.
Yeah.
And I'm going to just share this document here. But I think each one of us is skilled at this, maybe more skilled than you give yourself credit for. So I like this approach to throw in there. You know who your decision makers are, who impacts you. We talk about the economic buyer, the technical buyer, all these different things, but this may be a little bit of a different lens into it. This is the person that you're working with. So I'll use Denise as the example. She's working with somebody from HR. Let's just call it that. But in the drive space, especially at bigger communities, they know that there are all these other influencers on the outside that could impact the deal. And Sheila, if you could just give me the titles of some of the people that maybe get involved with decision making at deals that you guys are working on, what would be some titles?
Well, the CFO, the CEO.
CFO, okay.
Yeah, sometimes we're talking to an administrator or director.
Okay. I'll just type director. And any other titles that you might throw in here?
I don't think so. Vanessa or Alan?
Maybe marketing.
Okay,
Marketing.
that's perfect. And for illustrative purposes, this is great. So maybe somebody from marketing. So if Sheila is working with the HR person, and because we all know our businesses, I won't say inside and out, but as you get more experience, time and territory, you start to understand that. If Sheila's working with the HR person, she may want to pose, if we went back to Andy's slide, hey, we should probably bring in the CFO. When should we bring in the CEO? We need to talk to somebody who's the director of community operations. We should probably be speaking with somebody in marketing. This is almost her checklist of the different players that are involved. And here's the beauty. Again, back to looking at Sandler from a linear perspective, step by step. If we eliminate that process, Sheila knows in her earlier interactions, she needs to start gathering up these folks because she knows I need to get in front of the CFO. I need to get in front of the CEO. We all have complicated sales, different challenges, but I think this group, you guys have been doing this for a while, you know who you have to deal with. We just have to take it from here, put it down on paper, and be comfortable saying, hey, Sheila, we need to be in front of the CEO. Now, that might not be the way that I say it, but I want to start to tee that up earlier on in the sales process. Just another lens at looking at making sure when she's ready to put together that proposal, she goes, check, 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 check. I've got all of these folks involved. And again, I talk about close rate. If we're getting all those check marks, our close rate is getting close to, close to 100% at this point. Different lens. Any questions or thoughts there? It makes sense to everybody? Nobody's falling asleep yet? 2 more minutes and then you're on your own. Oh, less than a minute.
Well, Dave, I just have one thought. Like, we get frustrated. Sometimes our sales process feels lengthy because we frequently do have to pause and bring other people into the process. And from what I'm hearing, that's not exactly a failure. It could be a frustration, but it's okay if the sales process is a bit lengthy since we're dealing with organizations that have so many decision makers.
Absolutely. I would rather have you slow it down, get all the right people engaged. And what will happen over time is you'll get better and more efficient at bringing those people together because you know that they have to be brought in earlier. So yeah, it's a learning process and absolutely not a failure. It's great awareness. And the question then becomes, is there a way to make that more efficient and speed it up at the end of the day? Great point, Sheila.
Can we do some quick lessons learned? Those that have to leave can go first. Let's spin around. Anybody? Everybody?
I think I just shared mine.
All right, you're off the hook.
Yes, you did.
I really liked the first thing that you shared, Dave, about the 3 ways to kind of lock in people's budget. I think money is a difficult conversation sometimes.
Yes.
And so to have some ways in your back pocket is helpful. Thank you.
Yes, and I call those all back pocket things, Vanessa. So absolute great observation.
Anybody?
I think disqualifying, it's always been kind of hard for me because all I want to do is get the sale. So I never want to disqualify anybody, but I've been learning through Sandler that it has to be done sometimes, unfortunately.
Yep. Got to be comfortable with the DQ.
So kind of piggyback off that, I would say disqualifying after the budget stage is something that I probably wouldn't do, but I think it's something that could save a lot of emotional stress. There's nothing worse than dealing with the prospect that, you have multiple deals where you get to that step and then it's, sorry, the other person had a decision.
Yeah, I mean, you're